When you've spent 30 years building a legacy for your children, you expect a certain level of respect in return. What you don't expect is to wake up one morning to find a stranger has moved into your home without so much as a conversation. I never thought my son would betray my trust like this, but sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who take advantage of our generosity. This is the story of how I was forced to choose between being a doormat and standing my ground, and why my son's inheritance is now funding scholarships for deserving students instead. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The morning everything changed like any other Thursday. I was in the kitchen of my Victorian home in Oak Ridge, a quiet suburb where I'd lived for the past 27 years. The house, with its sprawling garden and hand-carved moldings, had been my passion project since Roger, my late husband, and I purchased it as a fixer-upper. We'd raised our son Tyler here, and after Roger passed from cancer 8 years ago, the house became both my sanctuary and my greatest asset. At 62, I had settled into a comfortable routine. Retirement from my position as hospital administrator had given me the freedom to volunteer at the local animal shelter 3 days a week and tend to my prized rose garden. The rest of my time was split between my book club, yoga classes, and occasional dinners with friends who were scattered across the city. It wasn't an exciting life by most standards, but it was mine, and I had fought hard for this peace. The coffee had just finished brewing when I heard unfamiliar footsteps coming down the stairs. Frozen in place, I watched as a young woman I'd never seen before walked into my kitchen wearing nothing but one of Tyler's old t-shirts and a pair of boxer shorts. Her blonde hair was piled messily on top of her head, and she had the confident air of someone who felt entirely at home. "Morning," she said casually, heading straight for my coffee pot. "Tyler said you make the best coffee in town." She helped herself to my favorite mug, the one Roger had given me on our 20th anniversary, and leaned against the counter. "I'm sorry," I managed, still clutching my own cup. "Who are you?" The woman looked surprised, her perfectly arched eyebrows rising slightly. "I'm Amber, Tyler's girlfriend. He didn't tell you I moved in?" The shock hit me like a bucket of ice water. Tyler, my 30-year-old son, lived in the basement apartment of my home, an arrangement we'd made 3 years ago when he claimed he needed to save money after his divorce from Sarah. It was supposed to be temporary, just until he got back on his feet. The separate entrance and kitchenette gave us both privacy, but we shared the laundry room and occasionally had Sunday dinners together. What we did not share was the right to move other people into my home without discussion. "No," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Tyler did not mention that." Amber shrugged, apparently unbothered by this revelation. "Well, surprise? I guess he wanted to ease you into it. We've been together for 4 months now, and my lease was up. So," she trailed off, helping herself to the pastries I'd bought for my book club meeting later that day. Before I could respond, Tyler appeared in the doorway. At the sight of us together, his face fell slightly, but he quickly recovered with a forced smile. "Mom, I see you've met Amber." "Just now," I replied, my tone carrying a warning he chose to ignore. Tyler crossed the kitchen to kiss Amber on the cheek before turning to me. "I was going to tell you this weekend. It just happened kind of fast." "Fast enough that her belongings are already here, but not fast enough for you to have a conversation with me first?" I asked. Tyler had the decency to look embarrassed. "Her old roommate was being difficult, and we needed to get her stuff out quickly. I didn't think you'd mind. It's not like we're in your way down there." But they were in my way. My house had rules that Tyler had agreed to when he moved back home. No overnight guests without notice, no alterations to the property, and most importantly, no major changes without discussion. Moving someone in permanently was definitely a major change. "We should talk about this," I said, glancing meaningfully at Amber. She took the hint with surprising grace. "I'll go get dressed. Nice meeting you, Mrs. Reynolds. After she left, I turned to my son. Tyler, this is completely unacceptable. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. So much like his father's, it sometimes hurt to look at him. Mom, I'm 30 years old. I shouldn't have to ask permission to have my girlfriend live with me. If you were living in your own house, you'd be right. But this is my house, and that's my basement apartment that I'm letting you use rent-free. I set my coffee down, trying to stay calm. We had an agreement. I pay utilities, he countered, as if that covered the market value of a 2-bedroom apartment in one of the city's most desirable neighborhoods. Partial utilities, I corrected. And that's not the point. The point is respect. You should have talked to me first. Tyler's expression hardened, that stubborn look he'd had since childhood when he wasn't getting his way. Amber needed a place. To stay. What was I supposed to do? Leave her homeless because you might say no? Was she actually going to be homeless, or did she just not want to pay rent somewhere else? I asked, already suspecting the answer. His silence told me everything I needed to know. Look, he finally said, what's done is done. Her stuff is here, and we're together. Can't you just be happy for me? Sarah's been gone for 3 years now. The mention of Sarah stung. I had adored my daughter-in-law, a kind-hearted elementary school teacher who had brought out the best in Tyler. Their divorce, initiated by Tyler after what he called growing apart, had been a shock to everyone, including Sarah. Since then, Tyler had cycled through several relationships, none lasting more than a few months. This isn't about Sarah, I said. It's about you making decisions that affect my home without consulting me. Tyler rolled his eyes. It's always going to be your home, isn't it? Even though Dad left it to both of us. This was another point of contention. Roger had left the house to me, with the provision that it would pass to Tyler after my death. Tyler seemed to interpret this as giving him equal ownership now, despite the fact that I was very much alive and paying all the property, taxes and maintenance costs. Yes, Tyler, it is my home. And if you want to continue living here, we need to establish some boundaries. Fine, he said, the word clipped. What boundaries? I took a deep breath. First, Amber needs to contribute to the household expenses if she's going to live here. Second, I want a formal rental agreement for the basement apartment, for both. Of you. Tyler's face flushed with anger. You're going to charge me rent now? After all this time? I'm charging both of you rent, I clarified. A fair market rate, minus a family discount. This is unbelievable, Tyler muttered. Dad would never have done this. It was a low blow, one he knew would hurt. Roger had been generous to a fault, often to our financial detriment. His inability to say no to Tyler had created a pattern of entitlement that I was still dealing with years later. Your father isn't here, I said quietly. And I need to make decisions that are fair to everyone, including myself. Tyler pushed away from the counter. I have to get to work. We can talk about this later. He left without another word, leaving me alone in the kitchen, wondering when exactly I had lost control of my own home. That evening, I called my closest friend, Patricia, who had known me since before Tyler was born. He did what? Patricia exclaimed when I explained the situation. We were sitting on my back porch, watching the sunset with glasses of Pinot Noir. Moved his girlfriend in without telling me, I repeated, and then acted like I was being unreasonable for having a problem with it. Patricia shook her head. Eleanor, I love Tyler like he's my own, but that boy has been taking advantage of your good nature for years. It wasn't the first time she'd made this observation. Patricia had been vocal about her concerns when Tyler moved back home after his divorce, insisting he needed temporary support despite having a well-paying job as a software developer. I just don't understand when he became so entitled, I said. Roger and I tried to raise him to be responsible. Roger also bailed him out of every consequence, Patricia reminded me gently. Remember college? The dropped classes you didn't. know about until the tuition couldn't be refunded? Or the credit card debt Roger paid off without telling you? I did remember, all too well. Roger's parenting philosophy had been to smooth Tyler's path, removing obstacles before our son even encountered them. It had come from a place of love, but had ultimately done Tyler a disservice. I just don't know what to do now, I admitted. I don't want to kick him out. He's still my son. No one's saying kick him out, Patricia assured me. But maybe it's time for some tough love. You're not getting any younger, Ellie. You need to think about your own future, too. She was right. My retirement fund was substantial, but not inexhaustible. The money I had set aside for Tyler's inheritance, a trust Roger had established and I had continued to fund, was meant to secure his future after I was gone, not to subsidize his lifestyle now. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I'm going to insist on the rental agreement, I decided. And if he doesn't like it, he and Amber can find their own place. Patricia nodded approvingly. And maybe it's time to revisit your estate planning, too. Just as a precaution. The thought had already crossed my mind. The next morning, I left a printed rental agreement on the kitchen counter with a note asking Tyler and Amber to review it. The terms were more than fair, calling $200 a month for a space that would easily rent for $2,000 on the open market, with utilities included. I also included information about tenant rights and responsibilities, making it clear that this was now a landlord-tenant relationship rather than a favor. I didn't see either of them that day, but when I returned from my volunteer shift at the animal shelter, I found the agreement still on the counter, unmarked but with a terse note from Tyler. We need to talk. That evening, Tyler came upstairs alone. His expression was a mixture of frustration and calculation, an expression I recognized from his childhood negotiations for later bedtimes or extra dessert. Mom, I know you're upset about how Amber moved in, he began, sitting across from me at the dining room table. And I'm sorry I didn't talk to you first. That was wrong. The apology caught me by surprise. It wasn't like Tyler to admit fault so readily. Thank you for acknowledging that, I said cautiously. But, he continued, I think you're overreacting with this rental agreement. Amber and I aren't in a position to pay that kind of rent right now. I frowned. Tyler, you make 6 figures at your job. Amber works too, doesn't she? He shifted uncomfortably. She's between jobs at the moment, and I have a lot of expenses you don't know about. What kind of expenses? I asked, immediately concerned. Are you in some kind of trouble? No, he assured me quickly. Just, the car loan, some credit card debt from the divorce, student loans. I knew for a fact that Roger had paid off Tyler's student loans before he passed away, and Tyler's divorce from Sarah had been relatively straightforward, with few assets to divide and no children to consider. I'd like to see a breakdown of these expenses, I said. If you're struggling financially, maybe I can help you create a budget. Tyler's expression hardened. I don't need you micromanaging my finances, Mom. I'm an adult. Adults pay their own way, I pointed out. If you can't afford to pay a reduced rent for the space you're occupying, then maybe you need to re-examine your spending habits. Or maybe you could stop being so rigid, Tyler countered. It's not like you need the money. And what about Amber? Are you really going to make her pay to live in a basement? No, I said calmly. I'm making both of you pay to live in a fully renovated 2-bedroom apartment that happens to be in the basement of a house in one of the best neighborhoods in the city. Tyler leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. What if we just moved upstairs? There are 3 empty bedrooms up here. Then we wouldn't be taking up a rentable space. The suggestion left me momentarily speechless. Not only was Tyler unwilling to pay for the space he was using, but now he wanted to expand into the main part of my home? Absolutely not, I said, firmly. Tyler, this is my home. I value my privacy and my space. You and Amber are welcome to stay in the basement apartment under the terms we agree to, or you can find another place to live. This is my home too, he insisted. Dad left it to me. After my death, I clarified, my patience wearing thin. And at this rate, I'm reconsidering that arrangement. As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Not because they weren't true, but because I hadn't intended to have this conversation in the heat of an argument. Tyler's eyes widened. What is that supposed to mean? I took a deep breath. It means that I'm concerned about your sense of entitlement to things you haven't earned. Your father wanted to provide for you, but he also valued hard work and responsibility. I'm not sure he would approve of how you're handling this situation. So what? You're going to disinherit me because I moved my girlfriend in? Tyler asked incredulously. No, I said. But I am going to insist that you respect my home and my rules while I'm alive, and I am going to take a closer look at how I've structured my estate planning. Tyler pushed back from the table, standing abruptly. This is unbelievable. You know what? Keep your basement. Amber and I will figure something out. He stormed out, leaving me alone at the dining room table with the untouched rental agreement. Part of me hoped this meant they would find their own place, establishing the independence Tyler so desperately needed to grow up. But another part, the mother who had watched her little boy grow into a man who now barely resembled the kind-hearted child he'd once been, ached at the widening gulf between us. Little did I know, this confrontation was just the beginning of a battle that would ultimately force me to make one of the hardest decisions of my life. The next morning, I woke to the sound of the basement door slamming. Through my bedroom window, I watched Tyler loading boxes into his car, the same car I had helped him finance when his old one died last year. Amber followed behind him with a designer handbag that probably cost more than the rent I had proposed. I considered going downstairs to talk to them, but decided against it. If Tyler wanted to leave in anger, rather than have an adult conversation, that was his choice. By midday, their car was gone, and the house had fallen into an uneasy silence. I tried calling Tyler twice, but both calls went straight to voicemail. Against my better judgment, I went down to check the basement apartment. What I found made my blood run cold. They hadn't moved out at all. The boxes I'd seen them loading were clearly just for show. Instead, they had fully moved in and helped themselves to furniture from the rest of the house. My antique side table from the guest room now held a television in their living area. The expensive Egyptian cotton sheets I kept for special guests covered their bed. Even the painting Roger had bought me for our 25th anniversary, a watercolor of the lake where we spent our honeymoon, had been relocated to their bedroom wall. Stood in the middle of their space, trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. This wasn't just disrespect. It was a complete violation of my boundaries. Taking a deep breath, I did something I had never done before. I began photographing everything they had taken and making a detailed inventory. Then, I called a locksmith. You sure about this, Mrs. Reynolds? The locksmith asked as he changed the lock on the basement door that connected to the main house. Family disputes can get complicated. I'm very sure, I replied, watching as he finished installing the new deadbolt. My son needs to understand that actions have consequences. Next, I called Patricia, who arrived within the hour, grocery bags in hand. I figured you could use some moral support and a good meal, she said, heading straight for my kitchen. As she unpacked ingredients for her famous lasagna, I filled her in on the latest development. You did the right thing, she assured me, chopping onions with practiced precision. Tyler is testing boundaries to see what he can get away with. Classic behavior for someone who's never had to face real consequences. But changing the locks feels so extreme, I admitted. Like I'm declaring war on my own son. Patricia paused, putting down her knife to look at me directly. Eleanor, listen to me. You're not declaring war. You're establishing that you won't be taken advantage of. There's a difference. While the lasagna baked, we called my attorney, Michael Greenberg. who had handled Roger's estate and had been a family friend for decades. "Can you come in tomorrow?" he asked after I explained the situation. "I think it's time we revisit your will and trust arrangements." The next morning, sitting in Michael's wood-paneled office, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and resolve. "Here's the situation," Michael said, reviewing my current estate plan. "Right now, Tyler is the sole beneficiary of your estate. The house passes directly to him upon your death, and the trust Roger established holds approximately $850,000 in investments, which would also go to Tyler." The number still surprised me. Roger's life insurance and prudent investments had created a substantial legacy, one that I had continued to grow through careful management. "What are my options?" I asked. Michael leaned back in his chair. "You have several. You could amend the trust to include conditions. Tyler would only receive the funds if he meets certain requirements. Or you could reduce his portion and allocate some to other beneficiaries. Or," he paused, watching my reaction carefully, "you could redirect the funds entirely." "To charity?" I asked, the idea taking shape as I spoke. Michael nodded. "It's not uncommon for people to revise their estate plans when family dynamics change. The question is, what outcome are you hoping for?" I considered his question carefully. "I don't want to punish Tyler. I want to help him grow up. Right now, he knows there's a safety net of inheritance waiting, so there's no real incentive for him to become financially responsible. So perhaps a structure that rewards responsible behavior," Michael suggested. By the time I left his office 2 hours later, we had drafted a new estate plan. The house would remain in my name, with provisions to sell it upon my death rather than transferring ownership to Tyler. From the proceeds, Tyler would receive a modest stipend, with conditions attached. He would need to demonstrate financial stability through regular employment and responsible financial management. The bulk of the trust funds would be redirected to a scholarship foundation for nursing students at the local community college, a cause close to my heart, as I had started my career as a nurse before moving into administration. Michael warned me that Tyler would likely be upset when he discovered the changes, especially since Roger had always made him feel that the inheritance was guaranteed. "Are you prepared for his reaction?" he asked gently. "I'll cross that bridge when I come to it," I replied. "For now, let's keep this between us." When I returned home, Tyler's car was in the driveway. I steeled myself for a confrontation as I walked inside, but the house was quiet. Cautiously, I checked the front door to the basement apartment. The lock appeared untampered with. Evidently, they had used their separate entrance. I was making tea when my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "We need to talk. Coming up in 5." 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the kitchen door, the one I had just had rekeyed. I opened it to find Tyler standing there, his expression a carefully constructed mask of contrition. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice deliberately soft. It was the same tone he had used as a teenager after breaking curfew or as a college student, calling for extra money. I recognized the tactic but stepped aside to let him in anyway. "I'm listening," I said, returning to my tea preparation rather than inviting him to sit. I wanted him to understand that this wasn't a casual mother-son chat. Tyler leaned against the counter, hands in his pockets. "First, I want to apologize for yesterday. I was out of line." "Yes, you were," I agreed, not making it easier for him. He cleared his throat. "I talked to Amber, and we agree that we handled this all wrong. We should have asked about moving her in, and we definitely shouldn't have taken things from upstairs." I turned to face him, studying his expression. There was remorse there, but also calculation. Tyler had always been adept at reading situations and adjusting his approach to get what he wanted. "I appreciate the apology," I said carefully. "The items you took need to be returned immediately." "Already done," Tyler assured me quickly. "We put everything back this morning. You can check if you want." I will, I said, and saw a flicker of annoyance cross his face. What about the rental agreement? Tyler shifted his weight. That's what I wanted to talk about. Amber and I discussed it, and we can pay rent, but $1,200 is still pretty steep for us right now. Would you consider $800, just until Amber finds a job? I sipped my tea, considering his offer. It was less than half the market rate, but it was a start. $900, I countered, and I want the first and last month's rent by the end of the week. Tyler blinked, clearly surprised that I was negotiating rather than simply agreeing out of maternal affection. $900 is still a lot. It's a bargain, and you know it, I replied. The basement apartment has a separate entrance, a full bathroom, and a kitchenette I had installed specifically for your convenience. Comparable units in this neighborhood go for at least $2,000. Tyler looked like he wanted to argue but thought better of it. Fine, $900. But I'll need until the end of the month for first and last. End of next week, I insisted. And I want a signed rental agreement from both you and Amber by tomorrow. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay, deal. As he turned to leave, I added, and Tyler? I meant what I said about reconsidering my estate planning. Your behavior lately has given me serious concerns. His back stiffened, but he didn't turn around. What's that supposed to mean? It means that inheritance isn't an entitlement, I said evenly. It's a gift. And gifts are given at the discretion of the giver. Tyler left without responding, the door closing with more force than necessary behind him. That night, I couldn't sleep. The conversation with Tyler kept replaying in my mind, along with memories of the sweet, considerate boy he had once been. Where had I gone wrong? Had Roger's overprotection and my own enabling created this sense of entitlement? Or was it something deeper, a character flaw that had always been there, waiting for the right circumstances to emerge? The next morning, I found a sealed envelope on the kitchen counter containing the signed rental agreement and a check for $900 marked first month's rent. It was a step in the right direction, but something still felt off. The signature on the check wasn't Tyler's usual scrawl. It was neater, more deliberate, as if he'd taken extra care with it. Curious, I called the bank. Mrs. Reynolds, said Marjorie, the branch manager who had known me for years, I'm afraid I can't discuss your son's account details with you. I understand, I assured her. I'm not asking for details. I just want to know if a check for $900 will clear if I deposit it today. There was a pause. Then Marjorie said carefully, I would recommend waiting until Monday to deposit any checks. Her tone told me everything I needed to know. Tyler had written a check he knew wouldn't clear immediately, buying himself time. It was a tactic I'd seen Roger address with him years ago during college, writing checks against deposits that hadn't yet been made. Instead of depositing the check, I placed it in my desk drawer and waited. Sure enough, Tyler appeared at my door that evening, looking slightly frantic. Mom, I need a favor, he began without preamble. Can you hold off on depositing that check until Friday? There was a mix-up with my direct deposit at work. A mix-up, I repeated flatly. Or did you write a check you knew wouldn't clear? Tyler had the grace to look embarrassed. It's not like that. The money is coming, I just need a few days. I studied my son. This man who somehow still behaved like a teenager despite being 30 years old. Tyler, do you understand that writing bad checks is fraud? It's not fraud if I intend to cover it, he argued, a defensive edge to his voice. And it will be covered by Friday. The rental agreement specifically states that returned checks incur a $50 fee, I reminded him. Plus, I'll be requiring a cashier's check for the remaining balance and last month's rent. Tyler's expression darkened. You're treating me like a criminal. I'm your son. I'm treating you like a tenant who provided a potentially fraudulent payment, I corrected him. The fact that you're my son makes this worse, not better." We stared at each other across a chasm of misunderstanding. To Tyler, I was being unnecessarily harsh. To me, I was finally establishing the boundaries I should have set years ago. "Fine," he said eventually. "I'll get you a cashier's check on Friday." True to his word, Tyler provided a cashier's check on Friday afternoon for exactly $900. When I reminded him about the last month's rent we had agreed upon, he looked genuinely confused. "I thought we were doing that next month," he said. "No. Tyler, we agreed to the first and last month's rent by the end of next week. Today is the deadline." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of Roger that it made my heart ache. "I don't have another $900 right now, Mom. Can't you cut me some slack? It's not like you need the security deposit, you know where I live." The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. The point isn't whether I need it. The point is that we made an agreement, and you're already trying to renegotiate terms that you agreed to less than a week ago. Tyler's frustration was palpable. "Why are you being so rigid about this? You never used to be like this. And you never used to take furniture from my house without asking or move people in without discussion," I countered. "Things change." In the end, we reached another compromise. Tyler would pay the additional $900 in 2 installments over the next month. I added an addendum to the rental agreement specifying the payment schedule and had both Tyler and Amber sign it. As I filed the paperwork away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being tested, that Tyler was pushing boundaries to see just how far my resolve would go. It was exhausting, this constant negotiation with my own son over basic respect and responsibility. The next few weeks passed in relative peace. Tyler and Amber kept to themselves in the basement apartment, and I focused on my volunteer work and social activities. The first installment of the additional rent payment arrived on time, much to my surprise. Perhaps my firm stance was finally having an effect. Then came the phone call that shattered the fragile truce. "Mrs. Reynolds?" The unfamiliar voice belonged to a man who identified himself as Howard Jenkins, the finance director at Oak Ridge Community Hospital. "I'm calling about your recent donation pledge." "Donation pledge?" I repeated, confusion evident in my voice. "I'm afraid there must be some mistake. I didn't make any donation pledge." There was a pause, followed by the rustle of papers. "Our records show that you pledged $25,000 toward our new pediatric wing. The pledge was made last week by your son, Tyler Reynolds, who said he was authorized to make financial commitments on your behalf." The room seemed to tilt slightly as the implications of his words sank in. "Mr. Jenkins, I never authorized my son to make any donations in my name, and I certainly didn't approve a $25,000 pledge." Mr. Jenkins cleared his throat uncomfortably. "I see. This is unusual." Mr. Reynolds provided what appeared to be a notarized document giving him power of attorney. He mentioned that you were recovering from minor surgery and had asked him to handle your charitable giving in the interim. My hand tightened around the phone. "That document is fraudulent, Mr. Jenkins. I haven't had any surgery, and I have never given my son power of attorney." The conversation that followed was painful and protracted. Mr. Jenkins was apologetic, but concerned about the hospital's position. They had already included my pledge in their fundraising announcements and had allocated a budget based on expected donations. I promised to visit the hospital the next day to clear up the situation in person, and ended the call with a growing sense of dread. What else had Tyler done in my name? A thorough check of my financial records revealed no unusual activity in my accounts, but that didn't mean Tyler hadn't made other unauthorized pledges or representations. The thought that my own son would forge documents claiming power of attorney was almost too painful to contemplate. That evening, I confronted Tyler in the basement apartment, Amber conspicuously absent. "The hospital called today," I said without preamble, "about my $25,000 donation." Tyler's expression cycled rapidly from surprise to guilt to defiance. "I can explain. Please do." I said, crossing my arms. Explain how you forged a power of attorney document and committed me to a donation I knew nothing about. Tyler's excuse was as elaborate as it was implausible. He claimed he had been at a charity gala for the hospital, an event I had declined to attend when he was put on the spot by the hospital's development director. Apparently, other attendees had been making generous pledges, and Tyler, not wanting to appear less charitable, had impulsively offered a donation in my name. I was going to tell you, he insisted. I just wanted to find the right time, and it's not like you can't afford it. You've donated to the hospital before. That's not the point, Tyler, I exclaimed, my composure finally breaking. You committed fraud. You forged my signature. Do you understand that's a criminal offense? Tyler scoffed. Come on, Mom. You're not going to press charges against your own son. His certainty that I would clean up his mess, that there would be no real consequences for his actions, was the final straw. In that moment, something shifted irrevocably between us. No, I said quietly. I'm not going to press charges, but I am going to do something else. Tyler must have seen the determination in my eyes because his defiant expression faltered. What does that mean? It means you have 30 days to find a new place to live, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. I'll be terminating our rental agreement effective immediately. You can't do that, Tyler protested. We have rights as tenants. Yes, you do, I agreed. You have the right to 30 days' notice, which I'm giving you now. You also signed an agreement with a morality clause that specifically prohibits illegal activity on the premises. Forgery and fraud qualify. Tyler's face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous. I made a mistake, okay? You don't have to blow it all out of proportion. It's not just this, Tyler. It's a pattern of behavior that I can no longer ignore or enable. I love you, but I can't continue to support choices that are destructive to both of us. As I turned to leave, Tyler called after me. What about your precious donation? Are you really going to stiff the hospital because you're mad at me? I paused at the door. No, I'm going to honor the pledge, not because you made it, but because it's the right thing to do. The difference is, it will be my choice. The next day, I visited both the hospital and Michael's office. At the hospital, I clarified the situation with Mr. Jenkins and arranged to fulfill the $25,000 pledge on my own terms, split into 5 annual payments of $5,000 each. At Michael's office, I finalized the changes to my estate plan, redirecting the bulk of my assets to the nursing scholarship fund. As Michael handed me the completed documents, he asked, "Are you sure about this, Eleanor? It's a significant change." I thought about Tyler, about the boy he had been and the man he had become, about the lessons I had failed to teach him and the disservice I had done by shielding him from consequences. "I'm sure," I said. "Sometimes love means making difficult choices. This isn't about punishing Tyler. It's about giving him the opportunity to become the man I know he can be. And if he doesn't take that opportunity, at least my legacy will help students who value education and hard work." As I drove home, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was making decisions based on wisdom rather than fear. Tyler might never understand or forgive my choice, but someday, I hoped he would recognize it for what it was. An act of love from a mother who believed he was capable of more than he had shown. The following week was eerily quiet. Tyler and Amber seemed to be avoiding me, which suited me fine as I processed the enormity of the changes I had set in motion. I expected anger, arguments, perhaps even tears. But the silence was somehow worse. It felt like the calm before a storm. The storm broke on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was curled up in my reading nook with a new mystery novel when the doorbell rang insistently. Opening the door, I found myself face to face with a woman I had never met. Tall, professionally dressed, with a severe expression that immediately put me on edge. Eleanor Reynolds? She asked crisply. Yes, I confirmed, not opening the door wider. I'm Jessica Winters, representing Tyler Reynolds. She handed me a business card identifying her as an attorney with a local firm. I'd like to discuss the illegal eviction notice you've served my client. The shock of Tyler hiring a lawyer against me was quickly replaced by indignation. There's nothing illegal about the notice. Your client violated the terms of our agreement through fraudulent activity. Jessica's expression remained impassive. My client disputes that characterization. As I understand it, there was a misunderstanding regarding a charitable donation. Hardly grounds for eviction. Forging a power of attorney document is a felony. Ms. Winters, not a misunderstanding, I replied, and I have the right to terminate a month-to-month tenancy with proper notice, which I've provided. Jessica adjusted her glasses. We can debate the legal nuances, but I think we'd both prefer to resolve this amicably. May I come in? Against my better judgment, I let her in, leading her to the living room where we sat opposite each other like negotiators from hostile nations. Let me be frank, Mrs. Reynolds, Jessica began. Tyler believes you're acting out of emotional distress rather than rational consideration. He's concerned about your well-being and wonders if you might benefit from speaking with someone professionally. The implication was clear. Tyler was suggesting I was mentally unstable. It was a tactic so underhanded it momentarily left me speechless. That's an interesting perspective, I finally managed, keeping my voice steady, especially coming from someone who committed fraud and theft within my home. Jessica made a dismissive gesture. Family disputes often involve heightened emotions and misinterpretations. Tyler assures me that he had verbal permission to act on your behalf with the hospital, and that any items he borrowed were with your implicit consent. Then Tyler is lying to you, I said bluntly. But regardless of his version of events, the eviction notice stands. He and Amber have 23 days remaining to find alternative accommodation. Jessica leaned forward slightly. Mrs. Reynolds, while I appreciate your position, I must advise you that we're prepared to contest this eviction. The process could be lengthy and potentially embarrassing for all parties. Medical evaluations might be necessary. Personal matters may become public record. She let the threat hang in the air. The tactic was as transparent as it was cruel. Tyler was hoping to intimidate me into backing down, using my privacy and reputation as leverage. It revealed just how far he was willing to go to avoid consequences, and how little he truly knew me. Ms. Winters, I said, rising to my feet, please inform your client that I will see him in court if necessary. I've documented every violation of our agreement, including photographic evidence of the removed furniture and correspondence with the hospital regarding the fraudulent power of attorney. I've also consulted my own attorney, who assures me my position is legally sound. Jessica's composure slipped slightly. Clearly, she hadn't expected such firm resistance. Additionally, I continued, I should mention that threatening an elderly person with false claims of mental incompetence could potentially be viewed as elder abuse under state law, something for both you and Tyler to consider. Jessica gathered her briefcase and stood. No threats were made, Mrs. Reynolds. I'm simply outlining potential legal avenues. Of course, I replied with a thin smile. Just as I'm outlining mine. Good evening, Ms. Winters. After she left, I called Michael immediately and recounted the conversation. Classic intimidation tactic, he said, the disapproval evident in his voice. Unfortunately, not uncommon in family disputes, but you handled it perfectly, Eleanor. What happens now? I asked. One of two things, Michael replied. Either they realize you won't be bullied and back down, or they file a formal objection to the eviction. If it's the latter, we're well positioned to defend your actions. And what about Tyler's insinuations about my mental state? Michael's voice softened. A desperate ploy, nothing more. No court would entertain such claims without substantial evidence which doesn't exist. Try not to let it bother you. But it did bother me. Not because I feared Tyler could succeed in having me declared incompetent, that was absurd, but because it revealed the depth of his willingness to hurt me rather than face consequences. My son, whom I had nurtured and loved for 30 years, was prepared to publicly question my sanity to maintain his cushy living arrangement. The realization was devastating. The next morning, I woke to find an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a handwritten note from Amber Mrs. Reynolds. I want you to know that I had no idea about the hospital donation or Tyler's meeting with a lawyer. I don't approve of either, and I've told him so. This isn't what I signed up for. I'm sorry for the trouble our moving in has caused. I'll be finding my own place, with or without Tyler. Sincerely, Amber Williams. The note surprised me. In our limited interactions, Amber had seemed like a willing participant in Tyler's entitled behavior. This glimpse of independence and integrity cast her in a new light. It also suggested potential cracks in their united front. Later that day, I received a text from Tyler. Can we talk? Just us, no lawyers. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory for what promised to be a difficult conversation. I arrived early, selecting a table near the back where we would have some privacy. Tyler arrived 10 minutes late, looking tired and slightly disheveled. Without the performative contrition of our previous conversations, his expression was raw, a mixture of anger and uncertainty. Thanks for meeting me, he said, sitting down across from me. He'd already ordered his usual complicated coffee drink, the kind that always seemed to require special instructions and extra charges. Of course, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I'm always willing to talk, Tyler. He fidgeted with his cup, avoiding my gaze. I fired Jessica, the lawyer, he clarified unnecessarily. She went too far with some of the things she said. It was a small concession, but one I hadn't expected. I appreciate that. Amber's mad at me, he continued. Says I crossed a line with the hospital. Thing. She's talking about moving out. Her note suggested as much, I acknowledged. Tyler's head snapped up. She wrote to you? This morning. She wanted me to know she wasn't involved in your recent decisions. Tyler scowled. Great. Everyone's against me now. The self-pity in his voice was so familiar it almost made me smile. Even as a child, Tyler had viewed the world through the lens of how events affected him personally. It was a perspective that Roger and I had tried and evidently failed to broaden. No one is against you, Tyler, I said gently, but actions have consequences. That's something your father and I should have taught you more effectively. Tyler's expression hardened at the mention of Roger. Dad would never have kicked me out. You're probably right, I conceded. Your father hated conflict and would go to great lengths to avoid it, but that doesn't mean he would have approved of your behavior. Tyler stared into his coffee. So, what happens now? You're really going through with the eviction? Yes, I said simply. You violated our agreement in ways that cannot be overlooked. It's time for you to find your own place and stand on your own feet. And what about Amber? She didn't do anything wrong. The notice applies to both of you as tenants, I explained. But I'd be willing to discuss a different arrangement with Amber directly if she wants to stay while finding her own place. Tyler's expression was incredulous. You'd let her stay, but not me? Your own son? Amber didn't forge documents or steal furniture, I pointed out. And she's taken responsibility for her part in moving in without permission. Tyler slumped back in his chair. This is all so unnecessary. We could just go back to how things were before. I'll return the donation pledge, make it clear it was a mistake. It's too late for that, I said. And frankly, even if it weren't, I wouldn't change my decision. This isn't just about the hospital donation, Tyler. It's about a pattern of behavior that's been building for years. You're 30 years old but acting like a teenager testing boundaries. So that's it? You're just cutting me off? Throwing me out into the cold? The wounded tone might have moved me once, but I recognized it now as another manipulation. I'm asking you to live independently, like most adults your age. Hardly a radical concept. I took a sip of my tea, giving him a moment to process. And I'm not cutting you off financially. You'll still receive a portion of your inheritance. Tyler's expression shifted, a calculating look entering his eyes. What do you mean, a portion? Dad left everything split between us. I chose my words carefully. Your father wanted to provide for you, but he also trusted my judgment about how to structure that provision. I've decided that a lump sum inheritance would not be in your best interest. Tyler's face flushed with anger. You changed the will? How could you do that? That money is supposed to be mine. Several nearby patrons glanced our way at his raised voice. I remained calm, waiting for him to compose himself. The money was never yours, Tyler, I said quietly. It was always a gift, contingent on my decisions as the trustee. And based on your recent behavior, I've concluded that receiving a large sum at once would likely be detrimental to your development as a responsible adult. So what? You're giving it all to charity instead, he scoffed. But the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes told me he feared exactly that. Not all, I clarified. You'll receive a stipend with conditions designed to encourage financial stability and independence. The rest will fund scholarships for nursing students. Tyler's laugh was bitter. Unbelievable. You're actually punishing me for moving my girlfriend in and making one mistake with a donation. I'm not punishing you at all, I corrected him. I'm creating a structure that I believe will ultimately benefit you more than a lump sum would. The changes to my estate plan were made with considerable thought and in consultation with financial advisors. Does Amber know about this? Tyler demanded suddenly. Is that why she's suddenly so eager to leave? She found out there's no payday coming? The accusation was so nakedly revealing that it momentarily stunned me. Did Tyler really believe Amber was with him for his prospective inheritance? And if so, what did that say about his view of their relationship? I haven't discussed my estate planning with Amber, I said. Any decisions she's making are her own. Tyler stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. This isn't over. You can't just rewrite Dad's wishes because you're mad at me. Your father's wishes were to provide for you in a manner that would help you thrive, I replied, remaining seated. That's exactly what I'm doing. Tyler stormed out, leaving me alone with my cooling tea and the curious glances of other customers. I felt drained but oddly at peace. The conversation had gone much as I'd expected, yet something had shifted. For perhaps the first time, I had spoken complete truths to my son without softening them to spare his feelings or preserve harmony. In the days that followed, the basement apartment became a flurry of activity. True to her word, Amber moved out, taking only her personal belongings. She stopped by the kitchen before leaving to return her key and thank me for understanding. I didn't know about Tyler's financial situation when we got together, she said, a touch defensively. Everyone in our social circle thought he was some kind of tech wunderkind. Tyler has always been skilled at creating impressions, I acknowledged. Amber nodded, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. I really did care about him, you know. Still do, in a way. But I can't be with someone who thinks it's okay to forge documents and threaten his mother with legal action. I understand, I said and meant it. For what it's worth, I think you're making a wise decision. She gave me a small, sad smile. My mom will be thrilled. She's been telling me to find a grown-up for years. She hesitated, then added, I hope things work out for Tyler. Maybe this is the wake-up call he needs. I hope so too, I replied. Tyler's departure was less amicable. He waited until the very last day of the notice period, moving his belongings out while I was at my volunteer shift at the animal shelter. By the time I returned home, the basement apartment was empty except for the furniture that had been there. When he moved in, no note, no forwarding address, not even a text to say goodbye. Patricia came over that evening with takeout and wine, knowing I would need the company. I keep wondering if I did the right thing, I confessed as we sat in the living room. Maybe I was too harsh. Patricia topped off my wine glass. Eleanor, listen to me. You gave that boy chance after chance. You provided a beautiful home, financial support, forgiveness for countless transgressions. What more could any parent reasonably do? But what if this pushes him away permanently? What if he never speaks to me again? Patricia's expression softened. That would be Tyler's choice, not yours. You can't control his reactions, only your own actions. And your actions have been more than fair. She was right, of course. Yet the mother in me still ached for the little boy who had once brought me dandelions from the yard, proudly announcing they were flowers for the prettiest mom ever. Where had that sweet child gone, and could he ever find his way back? The following week, I received an unexpected visit from Sarah, Tyler's ex-wife. We had maintained a cordial relationship after their divorce, occasionally meeting for coffee or exchanging holiday cards, but it had been months since our last contact. I hope I'm not intruding, she said when I opened the door. I heard about what happened with Tyler and wanted to check on you. Over tea in the garden, Sarah revealed that Tyler had contacted her, seeking temporary housing while he sorted out a situation with his controlling mother. I told him my spare room wasn't available, Sarah said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. The entitlement in his voice was exactly what I remembered from the end of our marriage. I'm sorry he bothered you, I said. Sarah shook her head. Don't apologize for him, Eleanor. That was always Roger's role, and after he passed, it became yours. Tyler needs to learn to clean up his own messes. Did he tell you about the hospital donation? I asked. He mentioned a misunderstanding about some paperwork, Sarah replied. Knowing Tyler, I assumed there was much more to the story. I filled her in on the details, including Tyler's attempt to intimidate me with legal action and his anger over the changes to his inheritance. Sarah listened intently, her expression growing more troubled. Tyler wasn't always like this, she said finally. When we first got married, he was ambitious, funny, kind. Something changed over time. He became more entitled, I guess. Like he resented having to work for things that he felt should just come to him. When did you first notice the change? I asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. Sarah considered the question. It was gradual, but there was a turning point around the time Roger got sick. Tyler seemed to interpret your focus on Roger's care as some kind of abandonment. He started making more demands, acting out in small ways that escalated over time. Her observation struck me like a physical blow. I had been so consumed with caring for Roger during his illness that I had perhaps missed critical changes in Tyler. Had he felt neglected? Abandoned? Was that when the seeds of his entitlement had taken root? I never meant to neglect him, I said softly. Sarah reached across the table to squeeze my hand. You didn't, Eleanor. You were caring for your dying husband. Any reasonable adult would understand that. Tyler chose to interpret your actions in the most self-centered way possible. That's on him, not you. As Sarah was leaving, she hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Tyler needs to face reality. It might be the only way he'll ever grow up. I thought about her words long after she left. Was it possible that this difficult path was actually the most loving one I could choose as Tyler's mother? That by refusing to enable his worst tendencies, I was giving him his best chance at genuine happiness and fulfillment? The answer came in an unexpected form a few days later, a letter from the Oak Ridge Community College Foundation confirming the establishment of the Reynolds Family Nursing Scholarship. Reading through the details of how the scholarship would help aspiring nurses achieve their dreams, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. This was a legacy worth building, one that would help deserving students for generations to come. I placed the letter in my desk drawer alongside the trust documents outlining the stipend Tyler would receive. a structure designed to support him while encouraging growth and responsibility. Together, these papers represented not the end of my relationship with my son, but a new beginning, one based on truth rather than enablement, on love rather than fear. Tyler might never understand or appreciate the choices I had made. He might continue to view himself as the victim of a mother's capricious punishment rather than the architect of his own difficulties. But I had to make peace with that possibility. My responsibility was not to make Tyler happy in the moment, but to do what I genuinely believed was best for his long-term well-being. As I watered my roses that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The path forward would not be easy, but it was clear. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope that someday Tyler would find his way back, not to my basement apartment, but to the values Roger and I had tried to instill in him. Until then, I would continue to love him from a distance that allowed us both to grow. 6 months passed without a word from Tyler. Summer faded into autumn, and the leaves in my garden turned brilliant shades of gold and crimson before falling to the earth. I settled into a new routine, one unmarked by tense encounters in the kitchen or the muffled sounds of arguments from the basement apartment. The house felt both emptier and more peaceful, a contradiction I was still learning to navigate. I filled my days with purpose. The basement apartment, after a thorough cleaning and minor renovations, became a proper rental unit occupied by Melissa Foster, a surgical resident at the hospital where I had once worked. She was quiet, respectful, and paid her rent on time, qualities I now appreciated more than ever. The rental income went directly into the scholarship fund, creating a sustainable source of support for future students. In October, I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize. "It's Amber. Can we meet for coffee? There's something you should know." We arranged to meet at the same cafe where Tyler and I had had our final conversation. Amber looked different, more polished, more confident. She'd cut her blonde hair into a stylish bob and traded her designer handbags for a professional-looking leather briefcase. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "I wasn't sure you'd want to hear from me after everything that happened." "I don't hold you responsible for Tyler's actions," I assured her. "If anything, I admire the way you removed yourself from a difficult situation." Amber smiled. "That's kind of you to say. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one." She hesitated, then reached into her briefcase. "I'm actually starting a new job next week, assistant manager at Westside Credit Union. They're even paying for me to take finance courses at the community college." "Congratulations," I said, genuinely pleased for her. "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity." Amber nodded, then her expression grew serious. "I didn't just want to catch up, though. There's something you should know about Tyler." She slid a folded newspaper clipping across the table. "This was in the business section last week. The article was small, easily missed unless you were looking for it." The headline read, "Local Tech Startup Secures First-Round Funding." Below was a photo of Tyler standing with a group of professionally dressed individuals, all smiling at the camera. The caption identified him as the Chief Innovation Officer of a company called NextSphere Solutions. "He never mentioned starting a company," I said, scanning the brief article. According to the text, NextSphere had developed a promising new customer management platform and had secured $750,000 in initial investment funding. "He didn't start it," Amber clarified. "His college roommate Jason did. Tyler joined a few months ago after—" She trailed off, not needing to finish the sentence. "After I had evicted him." "I see," I said, uncertain how to feel about this news. On one hand, it appeared Tyler had found legitimate employment in his field. On the other, the timing raised questions about his previous claims of financial hardship. Amber seemed to read my thoughts. "He could have afforded the rent you asked for," she confirmed. He was already in talks with Jason while we were living in your basement. I found out later that he had money saved that I didn't know about. The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, yet it still stung. Did he say why he fought so hard against paying fair rent when he could afford it? Amber looked uncomfortable. He said something about it being the principle, that you couldn't suddenly start charging him after letting him live there free for so long. She fidgeted with her coffee cup. I think he also thought if he waited long enough, you'd eventually just give him the house. He talked about it like it was already his. The casual entitlement in that assumption was so typically Tyler that I almost laughed. And what about you? Were you part of this plan? Amber had the grace to look embarrassed. Not consciously. But I think I let myself believe what was convenient. Tyler painted a picture of us living in this beautiful house, rent-free, with a substantial inheritance coming someday. It was seductive. And now? I asked. Now I'm building my own life, she said with quiet pride. My apartment isn't fancy, and I'm on a strict budget to make rent and tuition payments, but it's mine. I earned it. As we parted ways, Amber hesitated. He's not a bad person, you know. Tyler, I mean, just immature, like he's stuck at some developmental stage where the world revolves around him. I know, I said softly. I've always known that. The news about Tyler's job stirred complicated emotions. Pride in his professional advancement, mixed with hurt over his continued silence and lingering anger about his deceptions. I considered reaching out, but decided against it. The ball was in his court now. November brought the first meeting of the Scholarship Committee, a group that would review applications and select recipients for the Reynolds Family Nursing Scholarship. I had been invited to participate, a gesture that touched me deeply. The foundation had set up the meeting in one of the community college's conference rooms, a modern space with windows overlooking the campus quad. I arrived early, reviewing the materials the foundation had provided about the selection process. I was so engrossed that I didn't notice someone entering until a shadow fell across my papers. Mrs. Reynolds? I'm Dean Watkins. Thank you for joining us today. The academic dean was a tall woman with salt and pepper hair and a warm smile. We shook hands, and she settled into the chair beside me. Before the others arrive, I wanted to personally thank you for establishing this scholarship, she said. The nursing program is one of our most rigorous and successful, but many deserving students struggle with the costs. It's my pleasure, I replied. My late husband and I always believed in the power of education to transform lives. Dean Watkins nodded approvingly. This first round will offer 5 scholarships of $10,000 each. With the endowment structure you've established, we should be able to maintain or even increase that number in future years. The thought of 5 students receiving substantial help toward their dreams filled me with quiet satisfaction. This was a legacy worth building, one focused on opportunity and growth rather than entitlement. The committee meeting proceeded smoothly, with 15 applications narrowed down to 8 finalists. We would meet again in December to select the recipients from that shortlist. As we gathered our materials to leave, Dean Watkins mentioned that the college would be holding a small ceremony in January to recognize donors and introduce them to scholarship recipients. We'd be honored if you would say a few words about why you established the scholarship, she suggested. The prospect was intimidating. Public speaking had never been my strength, but also appealing. I'd be happy to, I agreed. December arrived with a flurry of holiday decorations and the first snowfall of the season. I found myself thinking more about Tyler as Christmas approached. This would be our first Christmas apart since Roger's death, and despite everything that had happened, I missed my son. I sent him a text with my new address. I had moved to a smaller house closer to town in November, selling the Victorian home that held too many complicated memories, and an invitation to Christmas dinner. The message showed as delivered, but no response came. Patricia and her husband invited me to join their family celebration instead, an offer I gratefully accepted. Their home was warm and chaotic, filled with adult children, grandchildren, and various extended family members. The noise and activity were a welcome distraction from my own quieter life. As we were cleaning up after dinner, Patricia's oldest daughter, Vanessa, mentioned that her company had recently partnered with a tech startup called NextSphere. Their chief innovation officer gave a presentation last week, she said, loading the dishwasher. Super smart guy, really knew his stuff. Said they're expanding rapidly, opening a new office downtown. Tyler Reynolds? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Vanessa looked surprised. Yes, that's him. Do you know him? Patricia interjected, before I could respond. Tyler is Eleanor's son. Oh. Vanessa's eyes widened. I had no idea. He was very impressive. The whole room was practically eating out of his hand by the end of the presentation. I absorbed this information with mixed emotions. Tyler had always been charismatic and quick-thinking, traits that served him well, professionally even as they enabled his manipulative tendencies in personal relationships. It seemed he was thriving in his new role, which prompted both maternal pride and a wistful sadness at the distance between us. January arrived cold and clear, bringing with it the scholarship ceremony at Oak Ridge Community College. I spent hours writing and rewriting my brief speech, wanting to honor Roger's memory while explaining the scholarship's purpose in a way that felt authentic. The evening of the ceremony, I arrived at the college's small auditorium feeling uncharacteristically nervous. Dean Watkins greeted me warmly, introducing me to various faculty members and administrators. As we moved toward the front row of seats reserved for donors and dignitaries, I spotted a familiar figure standing near the stage. Tyler. He wore a tailored suit that emphasized his tall frame, his dark hair neatly styled, looking every inch the successful executive. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, we both froze. Then, to my surprise, he walked directly toward me. "Mom," he said simply, stopping a few feet away. "You look well." "Thank you," I replied, momentarily disoriented by his unexpected presence. "So do you. Congratulations on your success with NextSphere." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "You know about that?" "Good news travels," I said, not wanting to mention Amber or Vanessa. "I'm proud of you." An awkward silence fell between us, 3 decades of shared history and 6 months of estrangement creating a gulf neither of us quite knew how to cross. "Why are you here, Tyler?" I finally asked. He shifted his weight slightly. "I saw the announcement about the ceremony in the alumni newsletter. When I read about the Reynolds family nursing scholarship, I knew it had to be you." He paused, then admitted, "I was curious." Before I could respond, Dean Watkins approached, unaware of the tension between us. "Mrs. Reynolds, we'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Oh, I see you've met Mr. Reynolds from NextSphere. His company is donating technical support for our computer labs this year." Tyler and I exchanged a glance, mutual understanding passing between us. "Actually, Dean Watkins," Tyler said smoothly. "Eleanor is my mother." The dean looked pleasantly surprised. "What a wonderful coincidence. We're honored to have 2 generations of the Reynolds family supporting our students." As Dean Watkins moved away to speak with other guests, Tyler turned back to me. "A nursing scholarship," he said quietly. "Dad would have liked that." "Yes," I agreed. He believed in helping people who were willing to work hard for their goals. The pointed comment wasn't lost on Tyler, whose expression flickered with something like recognition. "Listen, Mom, about everything that happened—" He was interrupted by the announcement that the ceremony was about to begin. "We should talk afterward," I suggested, and he nodded before we moved to our separate seats. The ceremony was brief but moving. 5 students, 4 women and 1 man, were called forward to receive their scholarship certificates. Each spoke briefly about their goals and expressed gratitude for the financial support that would allow them to complete their education. Their stories were diverse but united by determination and genuine passion for nursing. When it was my turn to speak, I approached the podium with unexpected calm. The Reynolds Family Nursing Scholarship was established in memory of my late husband, Roger, who received extraordinary care from dedicated nurses during his battle with cancer. Roger believed that education was not just about acquiring knowledge, but about developing character, responsibility, and a commitment to serving others. I paused, my gaze finding Tyler in the audience. This scholarship is designed to support students who demonstrate not only academic potential, but also personal integrity and a willingness to work hard for their dreams. It is our hope that recipients will use this opportunity to build meaningful careers that make a positive difference in their communities. After the ceremony, Tyler and I found a quiet corner of the reception hall. He held 2 glasses of punch, offering one to me with an uncertain smile. "Your speech was good," he said. "Simple but meaningful." "Thank you," I replied, accepting the punch. I meant every word. Tyler took a deep breath. "Mom, I owe you an apology. Several, actually. For moving Amber in without asking. For the hospital donation. For the lawyer." He shook his head. "Especially for the lawyer. That was inexcusable." The apology was unexpected, and I studied his face for signs of the calculation or manipulation that had characterized our recent interactions. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in years: genuine remorse. "What changed?" I asked carefully. Tyler laughed, a short, self-deprecating sound. "Reality, I guess. After you kicked us out, Amber left me. I was crashing on Jason's couch, feeling sorry for myself, when he basically told me to grow up or get out. Said he wouldn't invest in me professionally if I couldn't get my personal life together." "Sounds like good advice," I observed. "It was," Tyler admitted. "And for once I actually listened. Started therapy, got my finances in order, committed fully to the company." He hesitated. "I've been wanting to reach out for months, but I wasn't sure you'd want to hear from me. Then I saw the scholarship announcement. Using your inheritance to help nursing students instead of funding your lifestyle," I finished for him. Tyler nodded. "At first I was angry, really angry, but the more I thought about it, the more I understood. You were trying to teach me something. I needed to learn." The simplicity of his understanding brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you, Tyler. I just couldn't keep enabling behaviors that were harming you in the long run." "I know that now," he said softly. "Jason's wife is a psychologist. She helped me see how I was manipulating situations to avoid responsibility, playing the victim while taking advantage of other people's goodwill." He looked around at the scholarship recipients chatting excitedly with family members. "These students deserve the help more than I did. They're working for it." His acknowledgement felt like a gift, one I had never expected to receive. "There's still a stipend for you," I reminded him. "The terms require steady employment and financial responsibility, which it sounds like you're achieving." Tyler shook his head. "Keep it in the scholarship fund. I'm doing well at NextSphere. Better than I expected, honestly. The work challenges me, and I'm learning to take pride in earning my own way." He smiled slightly. "Plus, I have equity in the company. If things continue as they are, I might not need an inheritance at all." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. By removing the safety net of guaranteed wealth, I had inadvertently pushed Tyler toward greater financial success than he might otherwise have achieved. "I'm proud of you," I said, meaning it completely for perhaps the first time in years. Not just for professional success, but for personal growth. Tyler's expression softened. "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot." He hesitated. "I know things can't go back to how they were before, but I hope we can start rebuilding. Maybe dinner sometime?" "I'd like that," I replied. As we exchanged proper contact information and made tentative plans for the following weekend, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. The rift between us hadn't healed completely. Too much had happened for an instant reconciliation, but a bridge was forming across the divide. It was the beginning. Later that evening, as I drove home to my new, smaller house, I reflected on the unexpected turns my life had taken since that morning when Amber had wandered into my kitchen uninvited. What had seemed like a crisis had ultimately led to positive changes for everyone involved. Amber was building her independent life. Tyler was growing into the responsible adult I had always hoped he would become. And I had found a way to honor Roger's memory while creating opportunities for deserving students. The scholarship recipients' faces stayed with me, their mix of pride, gratitude, and determination, reminding me of my own early days as a nursing student. They represented a future full of possibility, their potential limited only by their willingness to work toward their goals. Supporting them felt right in a way that simply handing wealth to Tyler never had. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone chimed with a text message from Tyler. "Thank you for tonight, and for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. Love you, Mom." The simple message brought fresh tears to my eyes, tears not of sorrow, but of hope. The path forward wouldn't be perfectly smooth. Old patterns wouldn't disappear overnight, and trust would need to be rebuilt gradually through consistent actions rather than promises. But for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that the son I had raised, the kind, thoughtful boy who had somehow gotten lost on the way to adulthood, might find his way back after all. And perhaps, in the end, that was the greatest inheritance I could give him. Not money or property, but the opportunity to become the man he was meant to be. Responsibility by hard-earned responsibility, choice by difficult choice, day by day. 1. Year later, I sat in the front row of the auditorium for the second annual scholarship ceremony. 5 new students would receive the Reynolds Family Nursing Scholarship tonight, joining last year's recipients who were now halfway through their programs. The scholarship fund had grown beyond my expectations, thanks to investment returns and additional donations inspired by the program's success. Behind me, a door opened quietly. Tyler slipped into the seat beside me, dressed in a charcoal suit with a blue tie that matched his eyes. Roger's eyes. "Sorry I'm late," he whispered. "Board meeting ran long." "You're just in time," I assured him, genuinely pleased he had made it. In the past year, our relationship had evolved into something new. Not the unquestioning closeness of his childhood, nor the tension-filled dynamic of his early adulthood, but something more balanced. We had established boundaries and expectations, building a foundation of mutual respect that had been missing for too long. Our weekly dinners had become a comfortable ritual. Sometimes we met at restaurants, but increasingly, Tyler came to my new home, occasionally bringing groceries to cook meals he'd learned from the cooking classes he'd started taking. These simple gestures of consideration meant more to me than grand declarations ever could. "How's house hunting going?" I asked. As we waited for the ceremony to begin, Tyler smiled. "I think I found one. It's a 2-bedroom craftsman near downtown. Needs some work but has good bones. The inspection is scheduled for Thursday." I couldn't help but feel proud of his methodical approach to home ownership. He had saved for a proper down payment rather than stretching his finances thin, researched neighborhoods thoroughly, and consulted professionals at each step. These were the actions of a responsible adult making sound decisions. "I'd love to see it when you're ready," I said. "Absolutely. I was hoping you might help with paint colors. You've always had a better eye for that than me." Dean Watkins approached the podium, signaling the start of the ceremony. As she welcomed the attendees and explained the scholarship's purpose, I recalled how differently things had been a year earlier. The tension of seeing Tyler unexpectedly, the cautious beginnings of reconciliation, the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Tonight felt different. The scholarship now had a proven track record. All 5 of last year's recipients were thriving academically, with 2 already securing competitive internships at prestigious hospitals. The program we had created together, Tyler had officially joined the selection committee this year, was making a tangible difference in people's lives. When it was my turn to speak, I kept my remarks brief, but heartfelt. Education is uniquely powerful because it cannot be taken away, I told the audience. Once earned, it becomes part of who you are. Our family believes in supporting students who demonstrate not just academic potential, but the character and determination to use their education in service to others. Tyler squeezed my hand as I returned to my seat, a simple gesture that conveyed more than words could express. After the ceremony, we attended the reception together, moving among faculty, members, administrators, and scholarship recipients with easy conversation. Tyler had become something of a mentor to several of the students, offering career advice and occasionally arranging shadowing opportunities at businesses connected to NextSphere's client network. As we prepared to leave, Dean Watkins approached, an elegant older woman I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Reynolds, Mr. Reynolds, I'd like you to meet Margaret Thornton. She's considering establishing a similar scholarship for our engineering program and wanted to speak with you about your experience." The conversation that followed was surreal in the best possible way. Tyler and I found ourselves finishing each other's sentences as we explained our scholarship structure, with him covering the financial aspects while I discussed the selection, criteria, and impact metrics. We functioned as a team, our strengths complementing each other naturally. "You've built something remarkable together," Margaret observed as we concluded. "It's clear this is a true family legacy." Neither of us corrected her assumption that we had planned the scholarship jointly from the beginning. The truth, that it had emerged from a painful family rupture, wasn't relevant to the good it was now accomplishing. Later, over dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant near campus, Tyler raised his water glass in a toast. "To growth," he said simply. "To growth," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. The past year had indeed been one of growth for both of us. Tyler had continued his therapy, addressing deep-seated issues around entitlement and his relationship with money. He had received a promotion at NextSphere and was now overseeing a team of developers, a responsibility that seemed to mature him further as he learned to focus on others' needs and development. For my part, I had expanded my volunteer work beyond the animal shelter to include mentoring sessions with first-generation college students. I had also started dating again, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, reconnecting with a retired physician I had known during my hospital administration days. Life held possibilities I hadn't imagined 2 years earlier. "I have something for you," Tyler said as we finished our meals. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew an envelope, sliding it across the table. "It's not a gift exactly, more of a repayment." Inside the envelope was a cashier's check for $25,000, made out to the Reynolds Family Nursing Scholarship Fund. The hospital donation, I realized, looking up at him in surprise. Tyler nodded. "Plus interest. I know the foundation already covered it, but this will help fund an additional scholarship next year." He held up a hand as I started to speak. "And before you ask, yes, I can absolutely afford it. The company's doing well, and this is important to me." The gesture touched me deeply. Not just the money itself, but what it represented. Tyler was systematically addressing the wrongs of the past, making amends through actions rather than just words. "Thank you," I said, knowing he would understand the depth of meaning behind the simple phrase. "There's something else," Tyler continued, a hint of nervousness entering his voice. "I've been seeing someone. Her name is Diane. She's a pediatric occupational therapist." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely pleased. "How did you meet?" "Through volunteer work, actually. I joined that weekend home renovation program for low-income families that Dad used to support. Diane coordinates the family selection process." His expression softened. She's incredible, Mom. Brilliant and kind and completely unimpressed by material things. The contrast with his previous relationships was striking. Tyler had always gravitated toward women who reinforced his self-image, beautiful, somewhat superficial partners who were impressed by displays of wealth or status. Diane sounded entirely different. I'd love to meet her, I said. That's the plan. Sunday dinner at my place. Well, my apartment, until the house closes. Just the three of us. He hesitated. I really want you two to connect. Your opinion matters. To me. The simple admission meant more than he could know. For years, Tyler had rejected my input, viewing my concerns and cautions as restrictions to be evaded, rather than wisdom to be considered. That he now valued my opinion represented perhaps the most fundamental change in our relationship. I'll be there, I promised. As we walked to our cars afterward, Tyler paused in the parking lot. You know, I was furious when you changed the inheritance plan. I felt betrayed, like you were choosing strangers over your own son. I nodded, remembering his anger all too well. But looking back, he continued, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. If I'd known there was a guaranteed payday coming, I might never have pushed myself at NextSphere. Might never have had to really examine how I was living. He shook his head. It's ironic, but by redirecting the inheritance, you actually gave me something far more valuable. What's that? I asked. The chance to earn my own way, to build something through my own efforts. He smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. Turns out, there's a satisfaction in that money can't buy. As we said our goodbyes, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. What had begun as a crisis, a strange woman in my kitchen, wearing my son's t-shirt and using my favorite mug, had ultimately led to transformation for all involved. Amber had found independence and a career path she was passionate about. We still met occasionally for coffee, our unusual friendship a reminder that connections can form in unexpected ways. Tyler had grown from an entitled man-child into someone who increasingly resembled the thoughtful, responsible person Roger and I had hoped to raise. His journey wasn't complete, none of ours ever are, but he was moving in the right direction with purpose and awareness, and I had discovered strengths I hadn't known I possessed: the courage to set boundaries, the wisdom to make difficult choices out of love rather than fear, the resilience to begin again when life took unexpected turns. The scholarship that now bore our family name had become more than just a redirection of assets. It was a living legacy that would continue to create ripples of opportunity long after both Tyler and I were gone. Those students, past, present, and future, were now part of our extended family, their successes a testament to the power of combining opportunity with responsibility. Driving home under a sky filled with stars, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the painful lessons that had brought us to this place of healing. The inheritance I had moved wasn't just money. It was the chance for my son to discover his true potential, for deserving students to fulfill their dreams, and for me to find peace in knowing I had made the right choice, however difficult it had been at the time. Some would call it tough love. I preferred to think of it as courageous love, the kind that prioritizes growth over comfort, truth over harmony, and long-term well-being over short-term happiness. It was the kind of love Roger and I had always aspired to offer our son, even when we fell short. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone chimed with a text from Tyler. Thanks for everything, Mom. Not just tonight, but for all of it. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. I smiled, typing back. That's what real love looks like sometimes. See you Sunday. And in those simple words lay the truth I had finally come to understand. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give those we love is the freedom to face consequences, learn from mistakes, and discover their own strength in the process. It's not always the easiest path, but it's the one that leads to genuine growth and lasting happiness. That, in the end, is an inheritance worth more than any amount of money could ever provide. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.